Hello and welcome to Best of Three, an esports podcast by Organized Gaming. I'm Mike, and of course, I'm joined by Alex Kim. But today we have not one but two very special guests joining us. We have Daniel Japiassu, the CEO of YBX Innovation. Daniel, it's good to see you. How are you today?
Great to see you. Yeah, doing well. How's everybody doing?
Doing good. I see
Good.
Ben sort of cracking up over there. What's
I was
what's
just
happening?
hoping you would mess up my last name too, and we can
Ben, you need
start
no
all over.
you need no introduction. We of course have Ben Feferman, CEO of Amoka Esports. Ben, how are you doing?
Yeah, it's great to be back, guys. Thanks a lot.
Good to see
Yeah,
you again.
great to
That's
have you
true.
guys.
Second time on the podcast. Things have
Yes, it
changed.
is.
Things have changed since the first time.
Since in-person podcasts, yeah.
Yeah. Oh
Oh
my
yeah.
goodness, for
Those are
sure.
the days.
For those who remember, Ben, of course, as I said, CEO of Amoka Esports, um, building a localized esports hub in North America. And I'm actually going to throw it over to you, Ben, just to tell us a little bit about what Amoka is as of right now in our year 2020.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are really involved in building gaming communities, really now across the country. I think we started in Toronto. We wanted to be able to have venues, leagues, tournaments, and really now have made a big push into media. And the next chapter is going to be with teams when we have some big news that we're probably going to drop in the next week or two. So we want to really be firing on all cylinders and having a really diversified esports company.
Absolutely. All right. And then let's go back on over to Daniel. Daniel, tell us a little bit about YDX Innovation.
Yes,
Well,
I would love
YBX
to know more.
has a lot of divisions now. We acquired three companies this year, but originally we started as Y Dreams. Y Dreams is a very interesting company. We create immersive and interactive experiences, a lot of brand activations, retail experiences. So we're talking about mapping, projected mapping, augmented reality, virtual reality. We did a lot of museums. We did whole flagship stores. So it's a mix between digital storytelling and experiences, right? So we work with a lot of cool companies. Like we did all the Coca-Cola World Cup activations, which was a really fun experience. We did the Olympic Museum. We worked for NBA, etc. So that's how we got involved with esports, was in the live entertainment side of things.
Mhm.
And recently, we started looking more into esports, mostly because of COVID. We wanted to have a bigger online footprint and presence. So we acquired a couple companies that organize esports events, that generate content for streamers, and we like the one that does the data analytics side of gaming, so analyzing performance in gaming.
Now, I am curious. Tell us a little bit more about the vision of esports integration into YDX. Why was COVID kind of the catalyst for this kind of thing to happen?
Yeah, we started getting involved with esports on the live events. So we have a VR gaming arena called Arcades that we start bringing to all the esports events, especially in Brazil. Brazil have some massive gaming events, 100,000 people a day. And we had our VR game as a super attraction. We saw the hype, and then we designed this exhibition about the history of video games, right? That would
Ooh,
tell the story of the gaming world from the first generation of games until now this huge industry of esports. But this is all live, right? Live events, and
right.
COVID put that right back in the drawer. So we start looking more into online events and things that we can do while this is happening. And once thing has passed, and it is now, we're starting to have some interesting conversation of bringing back those live events and live activations that mix esports, gaming, interactive experiences, etc.
It's
So,
all in a very similar realm, really, because VR gaming is getting bigger as well. Even just to the regular consumer that's at home, there's a new Quest. It's a standalone device. You don't even need to connect it to a computer. So it's becoming more and more mainstream. These types of technologies. So
yeah.
that's really cool to
It,
see.
it's a great combo. And if you go, those live esports events, they lack that the type of attraction that appeals to the gamer. the gaming community. You have a lot of meet and greet, but you don't see a lot of other experiences happening, and that's what we bring, right? We have that physical presence there that gamers like.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, the growth of AR and VR has always been a very interesting one. In that it has been around for a long time, but really over just in the past 5 years, there's been a major spike in usage, in interest, in just
Yeah.
different innovative ways that AR and VR can be used. And esports definitely being one of them, adding in the competitive aspect to it. Uh, I'm curious, where do you see um, esports fitting into VR in the next, oh, I want to say, 1 to 5 years? Do you see it working its way directly into major tournaments? Is that already happening? What do you think?
I think Alex is right. The Quest 2 brought an element of popularity. I think VR was still very niche.
Yeah.
And we started working with location-based VR, which is bringing VR to family entertainment centers, gaming centers, because people didn't have their VR headset. So how can you practice? How can you get good enough in a game to compete if you don't? The number of headsets was too small, and Quest 2 is solving that. It's solving, and is also breaking down the cost, right? You don't need this expensive PC to play high quality VR. It's just very, very, very easy plug and play. So I think the Quest 2 is doing what smartphones did for the mobile industry, right? Is that easy? The price is accessible, and the quality is there. So I think that with this, the number of headsets will come, and then the game publishers will invest more in games that are competitive, that have multiplayer. If you see a lot of games in VR, there are multiplayer. You go check their reviews or try to play. There are not enough players to do a PvP online, so they
Uh,
have to rely on bots and things like that. So you need the popularity and number of headsets to increase, so we can have that ecosystem formed.
that
I,
makes
I
a
was
lot of
one of the
sense.
guys who I was on the pre-order for Quest 2, so I got mine pretty early,
Oh,
and I
nice.
really got it because I wanted to test it out. What does my 5-year-old think of VR? What does my 70-year-old parents think of VR? And over the past few weeks, I've been able to put them in, not necessarily to play games. We watch a lot of 3D movies and content. And I think like that's what's kind of been that light bulb to say, wow, they get it. They're excited about that. Because guys like us, we're gonna get excited about it. We love gaming, we love media, we love technology. But can they um can they get the average person? And the really unfortunate sign was, do you guys remember 3D TVs? Like that
Oh,
was like
yeah.
the
Yeah,
coolest
true.
thing for 6 months,
Right.
and
Mhm.
look what happened. So I think it's about seeing if VR with the new technology and the lower price point will be able to have a real mainstream effect for entertainment.
That's actually a very interesting point that you bring up, just with the multi-use factor in VR and in just headsets in general. I remember back when the PS4 or the PlayStation or the Xbox came out, most people, the majority of people, were using it as a video game system, but it was more than that.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
were able to use it as a DVD player. You were able to use it as a music player. You load up music on that and just have it broadcasted. So having the ability to have something there for your 5 year old or your 70-year-old parent, uh, it adds in a use factor that gets people used to using it, makes it more mainstream. Everybody knows that it's there for video games, but the fact that it can do other things makes you get used to it. And I like that.
So the reason why they have that is to help, let's say, men justify the cost to their wife.
Right.
No, no, I'm not buying an Xbox. It's a Blu-ray player. It does other things. I
Yeah.
think Quest is the same thing. No, it's not video games. You can watch YouTube and all that
Yeah, you
stuff.
could cruise Facebook or with the Oculus or whatever it may be, so,
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
but it is for training. There's a lot of they're doing they're using VR in hospitals and elderly
Yes.
homes and all
that's
kinds of
true.
things. It's a pretty interesting tool. And the younger generation, my 11-year-old, he plays way more than I do, because I think the content still needs to evolve to a point that nobody will have fatigue or nausea. And some games they really mess you up.
Mhm.
My kid can endure it. Some games I can't. I play 5 minutes and say, shit, I can't. But so I think the games will evolve, the technology will evolve, and then you will see VR being a very popular house item for sure.
What games is he playing?
Now he's playing the Walking Dead, Sinners, and Saints.
Oh, nice.
He plays a lot of different things.
Hey,
We
Well,
have the Vive port, and so you can have it's a subscription, so you can have access to a bunch of games.
Oh, cool.
oh, that's
Okay.
great. That's great. Yeah, no, this is definitely the time that developers want to be just pushing out as many games as possible to people to get them to play as much in VR as possible, so they can really get a full worldly view of what's possible in VR. I
So,
I want to pivot over
sorry.
to Ben as well.
Yes.
Ben, I'd love it if you could just tell us a little bit more about what Amoka Esports is now compared to even what it was a year ago when we had you on last.
yeah, it's a great exercise for me. Every month we send out a newsletter to all of our investors, supporters, etc. And then now that we're in over a year, I always like to read 1 year ago today. So it puts
Ooh,
things into perspective what we were doing a year ago. Um, but really, to sum it up, we're using the acronym META. So it's media, it's events, it's tournaments. Sorry, it's teams and it's arenas. I should
nice.
probably get my
That's
own
actually a
acronym.
really good acronym, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what we're doing. I think, COVID really was it was interesting because we moved all of our events online and there kind of was this mentality that this is going to be a temporary solution until we can go back to LAN, which is still true. But really we've excelled in a lot of areas. Like our Digital Havoc, our fighting game series is kicking ass. Our
Yeah.
Mount Phenom Championship series, we're going to publish some numbers soon, has really done well. And I think that if it wasn't for COVID, maybe we wouldn't have been pushed to really go online, because we were comfortable and doing very well with land. So I'm really happy with that kind of accidental pivot that we've made, and I think that's really how we're going to go forward.
For sure. I mean,
Well,
I can
and
imagine it segments you almost by design, but not in a bad way, and just this is the way that people have to live right now.
definitely. And I want to say that, yeah, that COVID is what brought YDX and Amuka together as well, right? So, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, Ben was saying that, or sorry, Daniel was saying that COVID was the reason that he sort of turned to
That's
online
correct.
and esports, right? So, and we sort of made that same pivot, and then we sort of that's
That's
where
where
they
the
aligned.
interests kind of overlapped. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
Yeah, I think it definitely accelerated conversations between us and Ben and his team.
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean, one thing that I've been talking about on the podcast recently quite a bit, and just in my day to day life, is just how much certain things have been accelerated in terms of number of years. So we see things like e-commerce has been pushed ahead many years
Huge.
because of COVID. Um, but I'm curious what your thoughts are, and I'll start with Ben. What your thoughts on it, on how things have been pushed ahead in esports, maybe in the online factor because of the fact that everybody's home now.
The best thing for esports was when sports got canceled. So I
Uh,
think if you thought before that esports was weird and nerdy and misunderstood, it totally changed when the NBA and NHL and everything was shut down. You have like the NBA Players Tournament, for example, like to see Kevin Durant, play NBA 2K with like 15 other NBA players makes it cool. Here in Canada, to give some Canadian examples, like Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner and Freddie Anderson, like all these guys are gamers and they're jumping into tournaments, like they're competing in Warzone, competing in Fortnite. Zach Hyman, he has his own Fortnite professional and content creation team. So I think that also validated the industry when people saw that traditional sports athletes were so gung ho, making big inroads, and I think COVID gave them the opportunity to do that.
Right. Daniel, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think that open people's eyes. I think the industry was already massive, right? The numbers, the size of the tournaments, the prize pools, it was already huge. It's not that the industry in 2019-18 was already massive, but a lot of investors, right? A lot of people didn't wasn't paying attention to it, and I think COVID just made people realize how big the market is and how big the opportunity they were missing. And I think that accelerated and make people go crazy over investing in esports and teams, and even more than it was before. So I think that's how it's going to really take the industry to the next level as it becomes more and more mainstream.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And I mean, in terms of Amoka, we've definitely made some strides going ahead and working with other people and the whole aspect of collaboration. Alex, do you want to tell us a little bit about what some of the things are that have recently happened? Maybe maybe a bit about Mount Phenom, maybe a bit about SXD. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, as Ben mentioned, Mount Phenom has been kicking ass, like
Mm,
really. So I don't know if I can share, maybe like one of the numbers that we have, but like live views, we hit almost what like 460,000 live
that's
views, right?
amazing.
So and Mount Phenom's not even the online series isn't even over yet, so it's still going on until December. Just absolutely massive stuff. So we've been doing really well there. We had an influencer sort of collaboration event with Mutex that did really well, and I
Mm,
think that's something that we found worked really well, and something that we thought was really great for the communities. His community, our community, it sort of brought them all together, and I think that's something that we'll continue to do in the future. Um, and yeah, something that maybe on the that we haven't really talked too much about, but Comic Con.
uh,
So yeah, YDX Amuka is partnering up with Comic Con to bring events, across Comic Con locations. A little bit more information on that, Daniel or Ben, do you want to shed a little bit of light? Let's go with
Sure.
Daniel.
Yeah, sure, sure. So it started because of the live event aspect, really. We, like I said, we created an exhibition about gaming and a playground that mixed different stories. And then we started talking with these guys in South America that they were doing Comic Cons for the past, I don't know, couple years. And with COVID, instead of slowing them down, really gave them an opportunity to expand. So they created almost like a franchising international one, and they have now 19 countries that will have comic conventions with them next year. And then of course they said they came to us, and besides the live part of it, said, "What about gaming?" So we are creating the Spartans League, which will connect all those 19 countries, all these 19 events in one tournament each country, and then you have, of course, the live finals during the Comic Convention, and then to make things even more exciting, they decided to why not do a World Cup? So they're doing the final Comic Convention will be in Panama with the support from the government, and they will have a big World Cup, and it's an amateur, so it's an open registration. So it should be fun. It's going to be interesting next year.
Very exciting stuff. That's like super great to hear. I only knew a little bit about that, but yeah, that's really cool. And then something else that we've also already done, and Ben mentioned a little bit about, is we're getting into competitive teams now. So Amuka actually has also acquired, if I may release this as well, um, SXD. So we've announced. Have we announced the acquisition of SXD yet? Well, we just
we
did.
will by the time this comes out. So
I
we're
hope
good.
so.
We're good. You mentioned
Yeah.
next week.
Well, Amuka is not public, so go ahead.
Yeah, we're a private company. We can say anything. Just one thing on the World Cup thing. Um, we haven't seen that in esports where people compete with their flag behind them. BlizzCon did the Overwatch World Cup.
Yes.
I guess it would be 2 years ago. Oh, yeah, 2 years ago, and that was cool and that was exciting. But it is pro players, so that's where I think, and I'm very critical. Like I don't think esports belongs in the Olympics for a lot of reasons because the Olympics just bankrupts a lot of countries and
Mm,
the ratings are down and a lot of other reasons. And esports is up. Like we don't need the Olympics. We're way cooler anyway. So, but this is finally an opportunity to really compete with your flag, because I think that nationalism, that pride, playing for your country, really, brings up brings up the energy and makes it exciting. So, just wanted to add that.
Yeah.
You wanted to talk about teams?
Yeah.
That was
Well,
yeah.
I actually I wanted to lead with that and sort of talk about how there's a lot of mergers and acquisitions happening, and that would
Well, I
lead
think we
us
should let
to
Ben talk
our
about that, shouldn't we?
our main topic. Yeah. So maybe we chat about that after the break.
Let's do that. We'll be back in just a
Ooh.
little bit, talking all about all that and so much more when we come back to Best of Three. And we're back. Welcome back, everybody, back to Best of Three with our conversation with Daniel and Ben. Ben, just before we came back from the break, you and I we were talking very briefly about last year's Amoka holiday party. And that was really my first chance anyway, to really get to know you as a person. And one thing that I walked out of that holiday party knowing is that you are just so up on your esports trivia and knowledge. Ben, how have you been keeping up with esports these days?
So really, I had a lot of time to make up. So the last PC shooter game I had played was Doom.
Ooh.
Oh
Nothing
man.
until CS:GO. So like when I really made the decision to go all in on esports, I had to completely immerse myself. I would listen to podcasts 2, 3 times a day. I'd fall asleep to it. I'd watch every single score video. Now I have a few others esports talk. So I really immersed myself. I made it a point to be an expert on it. And one of the things I think is really bizarre is CEOs of esports companies that don't play the games.
Right.
I'm not saying you got to be good, but would we all agree it's weird if Mark Zuckerberg never had tried the Facebook app,
You
or
know?
if the CEO of a cannabis company like never smoked a doob? Isn't that just kind of weird and creates that disconnect? So I wanted to be all in, and that's where I picked up a lot of that esports trivia.
Well, there you go.
I
Anything
love it.
super interesting that you've come across over the past? I know this is really putting you on the spot, but anything that you've come across in the most recent?
So you should know, and I'm sorry that you weren't invited, but we've done numerous esports trivia nights since then.
Nice.
And the theme of last one, and this is my favorite, is esports scandals. So I love talking about the scandals. So we did a whole esports trivia night just focused on scandals.
Oh
Wow.
man.
Okay,
And
Alex,
there's
were
so
That
you
would
there
be a
to
lot of
that?
fun.
You were there for that,
I
right?
was, yeah, yeah, and obviously Ben also has his own show, right? Esports Unfiltered, where he loves to get into those scandals. So, I mean, if you like hearing about that, definitely check out the show. So,
Of course.
yeah.
But Alex, so what are from your perspective, what are the esports trivia nights like?
Oh, it's a lot of fun. We use the Cahoots app, and there's like we throw out some small prizing here and there, but really it's a competition with our internal team, right? And that's what it's all about. It's we just get to choose something, and then we get to compete in it and see who's the best. Me, two-time champ, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh
And we have
wow.
Oh,
these
really?
PUBG sweatshirts we're still trying to get rid of as prizes.
That's right. Yeah, but they're a lot of fun, and it's a great way to get to know the team, right? So, yeah.
Alex, how about you bring us into our next segment?
Yes. All right. So before the break, we were getting into acquisitions and mergers a little bit, and I want to know. I mean, it seems like there's this constant stream of sort of news where the companies are being acquired, or some companies are merging, or changing hands, whatever it may be. I want to know why that is. Like, why is it so? Why does it seem like it's so frequent? So maybe a question. Let's start with Daniel.
Well, I think it's like we talked before. The pandemic kind of accelerated conversations, right? And I think the esports industry is very young, so you
Yes.
have a lot of startups, a lot of medium-sized companies, a lot of companies are now starting to generate revenues, now feeling the pains of growing, what it is to have a lot of employees, and so we've seen a lot of these guys who don't want to do it alone, right? They like me and Ben here. We're growing. We have right. Why not do as a collective? And I think this is a new mindset that people uh, before were thinking, no, my company, my startup will grow more than everybody else. But now there's a mentality, let's do it alone. Let's together. Let's join forces. And on the public side of things, that's where we are, right? We're in TSXV. We're listed, and it has some advantages being listed on in terms of mergers and acquisitions, because it's an easier process to acquire and absorb a company and generate shares. It's an easier exit for the companies to join. So I think it's a normal evolution of the market to create these pools of companies that are doing it together, saving money doing that, right? There are a lot of boring costs that now the companies can together kind of share those expenses.
Right.
And I mean, you see that too, just in the micro ecosystem of just influencers, influencers, people online, people on Twitch, people on YouTube. You're seeing a lot more these days of people working together, and that aspect of, as we mentioned before, collaboration. Um, it now is kind of a time where everybody feels like, we don't want to be alone. The only time that you do absolutely not want to be alone is during a pandemic, when everybody is kind of pushed into their own. So, I mean, I agree with you, and that's kind of my 2 cents. I'm curious what you think, Ben.
Few factors. One, esports is a relatively new industry. Like it's really not that much older than 20 years, and that's really pushing it. Really, it's like 10. So there's not really a proven revenue model. I think a lot of companies are figuring it out, and you have to move and try new things. I think that you need synergies and scale. To be in one vertical is not enough. If you look at all the top esports orgs, they may have started as a competitive team and now they're selling hoodies, or they may have started in one thing and they're moving to others. Like at the end of the day, we're all doing the same thing. We're building a community, we're building a fan base, and you have to find multiple ways to monetize that. And I guess the last one is just it's like it's an arms race out there, and it's eat or be eaten. So there's a lot of players, even in Canada. It's a 3 or 4 horse race. Everyone is just looking to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and you also have to be able to be big if you want to compete for the same sponsors. And when 60 to 70% of an industry's revenue is sponsorship driven, that means you got to be the biggest. Like you got to be a premium esport asset in whatever vertical you're in. And that's why, yeah, to Daniel's point, everyone's just saying like, we got to be bigger, we got to be faster, we got to move further into this industry before someone else does.
Right.
Mm.
And you mentioned with the esports arms race. Um, tell us a little bit about what you're noticing out there right now. What are some of the other big names out there? Then, and what are they doing?
It's a tale of two markets. You have private companies and public companies. So the top esports orgs are all private, and they won't go public. And actually, if you're in the Activision Blizzard League and you own a franchise and you have a majority ownership in a franchise, you can't be a public company. So they're just going to continue to sort of raise private capital, be VC backed, and that's why we're actually going to get the Forbes list. It traditionally comes out in November, which ranks the esports orgs in terms of their valuation. Last year we saw Liquid and C9 and TSM.
Right.
I think they were 1 and 2. Yeah, at about 400 million of valuation, which is pretty crazy. Like there are a lot of hockey teams that are not even $400 million, and I'm pretty confident that neither of them generate any profit. So um, that's
Pretty
one side.
crazy.
So the big esports orgs that are very team heavy get good valuations, a lot of celebrities. It's a lot of smoke, and I think that has a big risk for a big correction. And then the public market side, I think unfortunately, the big companies that IPO'd in the US had a very rough start, and I think it kind of tainted it for a lot of other ones. The super leagues, the allieds, the simplicities, even the torque, they've had a tough time. So I think we need good companies to restore investors' faith in esports and gaming. And I think now we're seeing like a new generation, a new cadre of companies that are going public or, moving in that direction that I think are going to change that perception.
So what? Yeah, like it feels to me like there's just in the back end that there's a lot of companies that are sort of striving. They've set a goal that hey, we want to go public eventually. Why is that the goal?
Yeah, what do you think?
I think the dream is raising a lot of capital, and IPOs usually bring a lot of capital for growth. But I think it's just the culture. I don't think it's necessarily the best path to go public. And we are public, so we can see both sides of things, right? Is the grass being greener if you're not public or if you are public? So I think in the end of the day, you need a healthy business, sustainable, good revenues, right? Adaptable, nimble, and have a good internal culture of passionate employees. That's if it's here for public or private. I mean, your success is not going to be measured necessarily by that. Um, I think you're more vulnerable in a sense being public. I think there's
Yeah.
higher risk, but
Oh, for
also
sure. Yeah.
you can have that ability to raise a lot of capital at some point. So people love that, right?
Yeah.
It
And
does
I
seem like it's, Canada and the US are very different in that respect. In the US, you have this robust venture capital culture, and they're very patient. Like, Palantir, which we're investors in, that took 10 plus years to get that company to the finish line. And in Silicon Valley, you're seeing that all these behemoths are taking longer and longer to go public, and there's no luster. The cachet of being public has definitely been diluted. In Canada, it's the other way around. Like, for some reason, there's just, if you don't go public, you didn't make it, and you can't raise money, and that is a bit sort of a structural problem because we don't have a big VC community here. I can count on one hand how many VCs are going to really back private deals. So then you're forced to go public route, which has its inherent risk with all the Bay Street sharks out there that are really just out there to fuck you one way or another, and you just got to play the game, and that's just the difference between the two cultures.
Yeah, and let's be clear too. I mean, we're talking about junior venture exchanges, right? And that we're talking about cents, stocks that cost $1, $2, and that's because the lack of VCs, and you have so many different stock exchanges. You have the NEO, you have the CSC, you have TSXV, all focused on companies that a lot of them are pre-revenues. So
right.
it's a different market, a different mentality for sure.
Okay.
It's the
That
Wild West here.
yeah,
Wow.
that's really interesting. I
And
didn't I
that's
didn't
why,
really think about that. Yeah.
cannabis, where did all these cannabis companies get Canadian, but also the US, they couldn't list there. So, like, we had a whole exchange, the CSE, which is just 80 to 90% cannabis companies listing here. So it just, I think, yeah, propelled that culture of just like, hey, I have zero revenue. I have a cannabis LP. We haven't even started to build it out, but I'm going to raise money and we're going to be public in 2 weeks.
Right. They were betting
Yeah,
on
crazy.
the idea that everybody was going to kind of fall in line when it came to. And I mean, it just goes to show if we're making these parallels to the cannabis, uh, look at the incredible boom that it had once it was normalized, once it was popularized. It did what it did afterward, but during its heyday, it was massive. And so it really
Yeah.
made cannabis as kind of mainstream as it is today, and less stigmatized. I would also say because of just all of the inroads that it made for all the venture capitalists and angel investors and those kind of people.
Every couple years, there's a new sexy industry.
Yeah,
It was cannabis, then it was esports. Now it's
blockchain,
shrooms,
man. Blockchain
Oh
was
yeah,
huge.
blockchain.
psilocybin.
Yeah,
Blockchain.
like,
Jeez, blockchain had so
there's
many
always,
startups.
yeah, flavor of the week.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Now, you had mentioned a little bit earlier, and I kind of want Ben, if you could elaborate a little bit on this, on the notion of hitting verticals in esports. Now, for some of the people listening to our podcast who aren't too familiar on what that means, do you think you could elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah, sure. A vertical is a different way you can monetize something, or a different part of an industry. So within esports, you have game publishers, you have media and content streaming sites, you have venues, you have tournament organizers, you have technology, you have retail. So these are all, really different verticals within, one bigger industry being esports. So that's what I mean about how you have to be in multiple verticals, and really the whole Amuka YDX merger. It's thinking about those verticals and new verticals, and we as a company could you know we could have gone in a direction that was just very narrowly esports and continued on that path, or with YDX, we're really broadening that customer profile. We're now moving into immersive experiences. We're going beyond just gaming to more of a digital entertainment company. And I think that gives all of us the access to hit more of these different verticals and monetization paths that we wouldn't have otherwise had.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So with so many verticals in esports, do you think it's there's we're talking about acquisitions too. Is it better to just acquire companies to enter new verticals, or is it better to just build them yourself? What do
Or
you
is it a
think?
combination of the two? I
Yeah,
don't know.
maybe combination. Yeah. Daniel, what do you think?
Yeah, it depends always on the circumstances. I would say acquiring a company that has good bones, that have already, reached a stage that is, because it takes time. Some of these products people have been working on for 1, 2 years, and if you're starting from scratch, you have to face those same challenges of building something. So when you acquire a company that has a good team, that has a good product, you're just basically doing a shortcut. It's not you and since we are established that this is a race, right?
Mm, right.
It's the name of the game. You move faster if you acquire a company. And then, of course, if you have so many verticals now, there are a couple of verticals that you already have that will probably help that company to expand.
Yeah.
So it's a combination, but it has its fair advantages.
The synergies that I think Ben brought up a little bit earlier too. So yeah.
I think in the
Um,
There,
beginning we were definitely more focused on the acquisition, but there's a good term, I can't remember who mentioned it. It's called like aqua hire, like hiring through acquisition. So I
right.
think the fact that we've already rolled up 4 or 5 companies, we have the management power to really create and incubate, and that's really where you create a lot more value. Unfortunately, like a lot of early stage esports companies are going to say they're worth $1 million, and they've barely put a product into the market. So for 20 or 30, could probably get just as fast, just as far along as a lot of these companies are, and we already have the team built out. So I guess kind of the preference is always, can you do it quicker, faster yourself? But to the extent you can't, then exactly, like the clock is still ticking. So you got to pull the trigger on an acquisition to just to get it done faster and move forward.
Right.
Now,
yeah,
what
the risk is doing the due diligence, right, and knowing who you joining forces with. That's the key element there, the human element as well, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. You may not always know who you're getting if you don't, really do that sort of research and
Mhm.
sort of look into what they're bringing to the table, right? So,
Yeah.
and sometimes, yeah, like Ben also mentioned before, like it may be a lot of smoke and mirrors. They may, companies may look really good, to the public or externally, but maybe they're not doing so well behind the scenes. So, there's
It
always a risk
happens.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, just I think yesterday, Backstage announced that they mutually terminated their deal with E United, which was a pretty
Ooh.
big Canadian US acquisition.
Right.
So yeah, it happens, and I think what was great about Level 6, our incubator, is kind of that problem. I always hated having to do a bunch of Zoom calls or a bunch of meetings with companies, and then have to make a decision like yes or no. We're going to acquire, we're going to invest, whatever. At least with Level 6, it was like now we have 10 weeks to date, to really date, and to see how we work together and how we get along and move together. And even with Amuka YDX, it's that sort of same structure. You announce, I mean, we've been talking long before this announcement, but
Mhm.
you announce an LOI. then you continue to work forward, integrate the teams, and then you work on a conclusion, a definitive agreement. But there's those processes in place to make sure that you have the time to get to know the team better, work together, and really create the synergies, because that's the point of a merger or acquisition, is that you need to realize those synergies.
I really like the idea of how you just framed things like level six, um, where even though at the end of an incubation period, it may not lead to a further acquisition or working with anything like that, but you're still providing value during the level six period. You're providing value to the people that you're working with, in that you're providing them with mentorship and all the other great things that level six does. But it's like, while you're having those initial discussions, you're also pushing them forward and being like, this is where you would like to be, let's help get you there, and then we'll also work with you after that. I like that.
Yeah, that's the program, and we're now into our second cohort, and yeah, I think we've done a better job getting the right companies in the program, making sure. The other thing is, they can't compete with each other. So like, we
Right.
can't just take the four best tournament platforms that come through our door. We got to take one, and we don't take others if they compete with each other. So, but the process is going well. The companies are well. Daniel is he led a session a couple weeks ago.
Cool.
So we got a great team of advisors and mentors, and I think that's the difference.
Do you find that difficult as the cohorts go on, that it's harder to pick the right people, in that you don't, like as you say, you don't want to cannibalize yourself. You don't want to pick people who you've already worked with their exact business before. Is that harder as the cohorts go on?
Yeah, it's really tough. I mean, we had 25 applications for this cohort. So like, you're looking through a deck, you're having one call with the company, you discuss it internally. We shortlisted them, then we had a
Mhm.
follow up. But even still, it's who knows? It's so hard. It's so hard to tell at that stage. We may have passed on some great companies. We may have picked companies that we shouldn't have. So I guess you just try to learn from your mistakes and
Of
try to
course,
do better.
of course.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
we've had quite a few people from level six cohorts on the
Oh
podcast.
yeah,
That's
right.
been
That's true.
that's
Definitely.
been a great experience for us, and I believe for them, just to get the experience of really explaining your business to an almost global
An
scale.
audience.
Yeah, an
Yeah.
audience, exactly. Alex,
Um,
do we have any last topics before we end things off?
yeah. I want to know. Okay, this is an interesting one, but I've been thinking about game publishers and how much they're starting to do. Like, they already bring in massive revenue, and like, as they get into more leagues and as they get more exclusive and sort of try to shut other companies out, or choose who they selectively work with, like, do you feel like game publishers are sort of encroaching on the other companies in esports, the rest of the industry, where before it was like they just make the game, and then the
Mm.
esports side is up to the other companies, right? So yeah, what
Daniel
do you
has a
think?
lot to say about working with game publishers.
Oh yeah.
No, yeah, I won't say much about that. It's tough, right? Because they started as a gaming company, and now they're a media company. Um, Massive amount of employees worldwide, massive amount of money being moved, and it's hard not to become part of the man, the
Mhm.
corporation. And I think they are not managing to reinvent what a large company can, the way they operate, right? I think as far as I know, they have a new mentality, a new product, but they are applying old methods, I feel like. And so it generates some weird conception. So I do think they should be more open. I think they should be more faster, and I think the ones that are moving in that direction will have better results long term. Because who's to say 5 years from now, if all these games are still going to be the main titles, right? Who's to say that somebody will find a better formula and quickly become the new thing, and then you have games that people are just not that interested anymore. You have a generation gap there, and so I don't know. Yeah, they have a lot of power, and with power comes responsibilities, right?
Yeah.
So
Right. Yeah.
I
Ben,
the
what are your thoughts?
Go ahead.
It looks like he wants to say something here.
Please do.
Oh, yeah, no, like they're the gods, like they have so much power. Um, I mean, I'm not saying I feel bad for them because they're raking in billions of dollars, but
yeah,
they can't please everybody. You have a competitive scene, you have a recreational player base, and you sometimes want to balance that. And if you look at Nintendo as an example, they don't give two shits about esports. They never have, they never will. And that's their position is we want casual players and we don't care about competitive. Then you have Fortnite's and Epic's another good example. They don't really care about a competitive scene. It's trash. Most people have left. They have 350 million players. What do they care about a Fortnite World Cup? What is that? That doesn't even move the needle. So I think you kind of got to take a step back and say they're trying to create something for so many people, and they're not going to make everyone happy. And so I think that's the
Do you
challenge.
think they're a part of this arms race, like the game publishers? Do you think they're like stepping into that race, or do you think they're sort of on the sidelines there?
The race is over in game publishers.
Sorry, I
It's,
mean in esports as a whole,
oh,
like if as game publishers sort of step into that realm of like tournament organization of leagues, whatever it is, do you think they're really sort of just jumping in on the race and like leading, or yeah, how do you feel?
okay. I was gonna do like a mic drop, but it's kind of an expensive mic, so I won't drop it.
You need that guy.
10 has what?
You need that
Uh,
one, yeah.
yeah,
Um, Tencent has won the game publisher race for sure.
yeah.
Sure.
They just have a lead that no one will be able to catch up on. If you look at their assets, they own Riot Games, they own 40% of Epic, they own 5% of Activision, they own most of Glue Mobile, they bought Supercell, like PUBG Mobile. Like their IP is just so huge, their library is so vast. Oh yeah, Huya and Duyu, that merger.
Oh,
Who are the
yeah.
two biggest? Who's the biggest investor in both companies? Tencent. Like they got everything. So I don't really feel like in the game publisher world it's an arms race. I just think it's a really fierce battle for 2, 3, and 4.
yeah, and they can buy whoever comes along, right? So
Too big to fail. Yeah.
TikTok, oh yeah, that's just like an afterthought.
Oh,
That's right?
Right. And I mean, for me, the kind of parallel that I like to draw with this kind of thing is well, it's comedians. I mean, you look at a comedian going up on stage, and Alex, I see you look like, what are you talking about? I'm gonna tell you. So you see comedians, they go up on stage, they try and make a name for themselves, and then they do, and then they make a really big name for themselves, and they're a common household name, and then they're given a show, and then they're given the whole like jurisdiction over a staff. And then that's when you come out and you see, okay, well, this person isn't actually the best boss, was the best comedian. This is the same kind of thing in esports, a very, very loose parallel in that you see game developers who get really big from their own game, and then they try and step into the higher power of getting into tournaments, running their own tournaments, running their own circuits and their own systems, and then you see that they either do really well or they don't do really well. And you kind of, it's always that juggling act between you know, uh, can our team create the best experience for the players, and then can we also translate that into a an experience for competitive players? And often that means acquiring other tournament organizers or other groups and systems that will actually do that for them because they're not the experts on that.
Yeah, I think it makes sense for game publishers if they don't have a closed league to start acquiring
Yeah.
tournament organizers. I'm trying to think if there's a good example of that. I don't know offhand, but it does make sense. Like, why doesn't Valve have their own own a big tournament organizer? Like, why
yeah,
doesn't Valve
definitely.
buy ESL or MTG Group or
See, that is the
Or
perfect example for
blast.
me of a company that you know, thinks that they want to do it, but then aren't really doing it all that well. versus companies
Yeah.
you see like Riot that are really putting on a good show, because I think that they're learning how to outsource talent properly. Valve, I think, tries to do things a little too in-house and with people
Internally. Yeah.
without proper experience in it.
Yeah,
Well,
Valve
Valve has a
is
really
it's
small
the Wild
team.
West.
Yeah.
Valve has like a couple hundred, I think couple hundred employees. We talked about this on the last episode, but and
Mhm.
Riot is what, in the thousands. So you got a very
That's
very
right,
big
because
difference
they
in team size.
divide.
So
They set
yeah,
their divisions. They do their acquisitions. They bring in people, um, and they get each group working on different segments.
Yeah, I think
Versus,
Riot has a stronger strategy. I think they know
yeah,
more where they want to go, right? They're pushing that direction clearly. I think some others they're not sure, or like Epic, for example, that knows what they don't want to do.
right.
And bring it back to VR now, just so I
please.
know we're closing, but
Full circle.
that's what is interesting, right? Because VR doesn't have that, right? It's so early that VR doesn't have its Fortnite, doesn't have its Rainbow Six, right? So, and the game publishers are not developing versions of their games in VR yet. So that
Mm,
leaves a lot of opportunities. So 5 years from now, who is going to be the version of a Fortnite or a League of Legends in VR, and that will establish that. So for investment and for opportunities, it's interesting, right?
Yeah.
It's a good point. I looked up the most popular VR games, like PvP. I never heard of any of them. Even heard of any
yeah.
like these publishers, and maybe that's a good thing. Like this
It's
is
all
it's a new
indie, all
frontier.
independent, yeah. All completely new frontier. And you have some good AAA titles in VR, but they are not PvP. They're not your typical game that could be translated into esports. And honestly, even the gameplay still needs to be discovered, because in VR, how do you run around, right? Do you teleport? Do you use your arm movements to run? Do you float?
Right.
Which one is better in terms of nausea, right? How sudden movements and things like that. So it is a learning curve, and it is a developing stage.
Yeah. Ben,
Okay.
I saw you fire a finger there.
No, like what you hold the remote and you like,
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, like
and
teleport over
and
to
the
like over
screen comes
there.
forward. That's like one of the ways. Like you just
Yeah,
you
yeah. You
do
can
that.
teleport. You can fast track there. It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, to end things off, one thing that we do at the end of every podcast, of course, we throw it over to you guys to tell people where they can go to best check you out, the things that
Shameless
you
plug
represent.
time.
Shameless plug time.
Ben's favorite time.
Well, then why don't we start with you, Ben? Ben, where would you like the people to go?
You can find me on LinkedIn,
Mm,
Ben Feferman, or check out Esports Unfiltered. It's you can watch it on the Organized Gaming YouTube channel. You can also watch it on the Bolt Plus app. Download Bolt Plus, and you can see Esports Unfiltered. And I believe you guys should plug this. The best of three is on cable television, right?
that's right.
Definitely. We are
Yes.
on the Game Plus network. You can find us on TV. So very cool
It's a big
stuff.
deal. You guys have come a
Yeah.
long way.
Well done. This is
Thank you.
mainstream, all right. See.
Exactly. Daniel, tell the people where you'd like them to go.
Yeah, we don't have a cool podcast yet, so you have to check. LinkedIn is still the most. So you can find me there, Daniel Japiassu on LinkedIn. And if you're interested in understand what we're talking about when I say digital storytelling, people have no idea what I mean. So our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ydreams, you see a lot of cool cases of museums and exhibitions we've done. It's very visual, so I suggest people check it out.
Do you have something in like YouTube VR for people to see?
No.
No, not yet. Okay, we gotta work on that.
No, nobody's using VR, man. That's the
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. I was looking like it's not always like a 360 video or like
Yeah.
YouTube is
Right.
like it's
We
starting to get really
produce a
big.
lot of VR. We have a lot of VR content produced, right? So we have even a game with Disney in VR,
Oh,
but it's all location based. It was not created for people to use at home.
Online.
So now I think is the phase where we're adapting all that content and sending it back to direct to consumers. Because now
Very
people have
cool.
VR headsets, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
we can work it
Everyone
out.
pick up a Quest. Let's
Yeah.
go.
Alex, where
Yeah,
can people
beautiful piece of hardware. If you're a nerd, if you like technology, they are pretty cool.
That's how we're gonna do future BO3 episodes. We're all gonna put our headset on. It'll be like we're sitting around the table together. Daniel's team is
You
gonna
know what?
design the
I gotta
software.
say,
Market.
doing that in VR is a lot of fun. I have to say
I love that.
that chat, that virtual meeting, kind of everybody with cool avatars, and we can be in the moon having a meeting. I have to say, I like that, and I hope that sticks. I hope that a couple years from now, we are all doing this in VR because it's pretty fun.
I would love nothing more than to investigate that exact thing. And I have the gears turning in my head already. Like with how the people are positioned, I'd have them sitting at a seat at the table. And that's the whole gimmick, is just you have your seat at the table during this pod. You can look around, see the rest of us talking. I like it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Alex,
It's cool.
tell the people where you'd like them to go.
Yeah, I would like them to go and find us on Twitter and Instagram. So you can find Organized Gaming Co. On Twitter. You can find us on Instagram, and you can find me personally on Twitter as well. So I'll see you there.
And of course, as Alex said, Game Plus Network, we are there. Oh,
Hey.
Daniel's got a shirt. Oh yeah, there you go, repping the OG.
Isn't that the softest shirt you've ever felt?
It's so soft.
It is.
I love it.
There you go. Of
It's-
course, you can find the podcast at BO3 Podcast on Instagram and Twitter. Listen to us wherever you get your podcasts, or again, Game Plus Network. Daniel and Ben, I want to thank you guys so much for joining us today. And everybody, I hope you had a great time listening. We will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.